What's going on, everybody? My name is Tenebris Infinite, and welcome back to Generation Zero. Today, I've got 6 pro tips to bring to you guys. But before we get into that, what? 400 subs in 2 months? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy, and I am so humbled by all of the support that I've gotten from you guys for my coverage of Generation Zero. And, hitting 400 subscribers just inspires me to continue putting out more content and better content for you guys. So, with that said, let's get into these tips here. So, for the 6 tips today, I've decided on going with a little bit of a balance between things that are just necessity for your character and a couple things that are some combat related pro tips. So, all of this stuff is really refined. I've taken a long time to put out this pro tip video just to make sure that I wasn't putting out any sort of tips that would not be beneficial to a player, even if they had played this game for hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 hours at this point, as the game's been out for 2 months. So, yeah, for the first tip we're going to be getting into here, the first tip is how to utilize your stamina a lot better. So, with them including this stamina bar, it's given us a visual indicator for how much stamina our character actually has. And because of that, that means that we can utilize it and potentially maybe even exploit it. It depends on how you look at it. But in this game, every single time you take a couple steps while you are sprinting, your stamina bar will start to increase to a point where it hits a max point, and then your character runs out of breath, and there's this heavy heartbeat kind of sound effect that plays in your ears. So, what you're able to do is you're actually able to jump to decrease the bar, you'll notice here. I'm able to bring it back down by 1 and start the sprinting animation again. So what you can actually do is you can chain together jumps and actually decrease that stamina bar entirely right back down to the base amount. Takes a couple seconds of jumping here. But there you go. And now we're able to do a full sprint over again. And now that we're out of breath, we can just jump again. Continue maintaining our sprint the whole time by just holding the analog stick or whatever direction you're running and jumping in that direction. So with a tip like infinite stamina, you have the opportunity to do a whole bunch of things. So number one, you don't have to fast travel as much, which is really useful for maintaining and chaining combat together. Or potentially, if you haven't explored all of the locations in the map yet, for further improving your ability to search around on foot and to cover a lot of distance. So it does take a little bit of practice to get down the whole infinite stamina thing and learning the kind of touch to it. But I really find the best approach is to just let the crosshair disappear. So when you're jumping, you'll see the crosshair flash back on screen really quickly there. And so I find that when the crosshair has fully disappeared off the screen is a good time for you to press the jump button again in order to maintain that sprint. Now, a small thing is that when you're on uneven terrain like this, it can be a little bit odd for sprinting, and sometimes your sprint can get kind of messed up by that. So if that ever does happen, just let your stamina bar decrease the whole way and start the whole sprint process over again. So there we go. There's the first tip, maintaining your stamina through jumping and kind of bunny hopping. So there we go, tip number 1. And on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is kind of a little bit more of an inventory-based tip. But the idea is pretty much you're carrying too many guns. If you have anything more than, I would say, a maximum of 5 guns on your character, then you're carrying way too many guns and you aren't utilizing your inventory as good as you could. So, What you can do in order to carry more guns and also get the most out of your character's inventory is make yourself a second character, unload some guns onto that character, and then that way you'll be able to have a character that acts as a sort of mule for your main account, and your main account to have your weapon loadout of choice. Now, freeing up your inventory might be a little bit of a given, but I've got a couple buddies of mine that have been playing the game since I started, and or at least since it released back in March, and they have this thing where they really enjoy hoarding guns on their main character and just having as many guns as possible. And so this tip's just out there for those hoarders out there, 'cause I feel you. I understand you want to have all the guns. But in this game, it's a lot better to kind of delegate your guns between a few characters. So now we're going to be getting into some combat tips. And so some of these pro combat tips are really difficult to pull off, but when you are able to master them, will greatly improve your combat and the way combat goes for you. So, first off, here we're going to be talking about how to use defeated enemies as a quick form of cover. So, after you've taken down an enemy, you're able to hide behind them and use them as a form of cover. And this seems to be more effective with larger enemies as their hitbox is larger, and so you're able to utilize them as a bigger piece of cover. And when you're behind this cover, that gives you the opportunity to do things like reload your guns if you need to, heal up if you need to, switch around your guns if you need to, or do anything else that you might need to do in the middle of combat that you possibly wouldn't have a chance to do without any sort of cover. Now, the devs have been talking about potentially having a form of deployable cover in the community survey that they put out. So, if we ever get a form of deployable cover that we can put out on our own, I could imagine it'll function a little bit similarly to this. So, you guys might want to practice this one. Just so that you can get used to utilizing quick cover in the middle of combat. And moving on to the next tip here, there is a way you can actually deal with melee attacks much better than you've been dealing with them so far. So if melee attacks happen to be a huge pain in your ass, there is a way you can get around them a little bit. So it does require very keen timing, but if you're able to pull off a jump just as the enemy is lunging towards you with their attack and you are pulling yourself away from their attack, you're actually able to get away from the attack without being knocked down. Now, after showing you guys these clips, I'll just show you guys really quickly that in my skills, I do not have the steady feet perk unlocked. So I've been able to take these melee attacks without that perk, and that can be incredibly useful because if you get knocked down in the middle of combat, most of the time that's going to lead to you dying pretty much right there. So, yeah, again, it's just all a matter of listening for the audio cue of the enemy, and when you hear them initially start to attack, you make a quick jump and you pull backwards. And then for our last combat tip of the day, harvesters are one of the most useful enemies to defeat in the game, as harvesters drop weapons very reliably at the special level. So, being able to kill a harvester quickly and effectively a lot of times can be really beneficial if you're looking to go out and farm weapons. So the best way to take on a harvester is to kind of give them a bit of a rope-a-dope and manage to get behind them. And then when you are behind them, you can kind of unload on their rocket pods specifically, and that will do insane amounts of damage to them. Especially if you have a shotgun with some sort of spread, you're usually able to take down a harvester incredibly quickly. And then you'll be able to pick up their weapons. So as well, you also will want to utilize your speed to get around the enemies. Weird. This game's weird. You'll want to utilize your speed to get around the harvester so that way you can get behind them and shoot them in the back. And in order to be able to outpace a harvester for their turning speed, all you need to do is get a little bit close to them and then sprint right on by them. So, for the last tip here, let's keep a bit of tradition. So in the last two pro tips videos, I've told you guys of a couple locations that you can go to for some target practice. And now for the last little bit of target practice tips that I got for you, is that you can actually use the birds in this game as a form of a moving target. Now their hitbox is a little bit bigger than they are, so they aren't exactly a difficult moving target, but they are still a target that you can try to shoot while you're roaming about and you don't have too much to do. You maybe aren't finding harvesters or something like that while you're roaming around. Maybe take a couple seconds, shoot a couple birds out of the sky, and kill some time and get some target practice in that way. And there we go. There you guys go. There are 6 pro tips for Generation Zero. The May update is right around the corner, so there is going to be so much more coming for this game in the very near future. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful to you guys, and hopefully you were able to learn something from this. If you were, maybe give the video a thumbs up, and if you knew all this stuff already, give the video a thumbs down. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, hopefully you all take it easy. Peace.